All right, welcome everybody. This is being recorded. We want to welcome you to Module 3 of the ELD Standards Framework Coffee Chats. We hope that you've been able to join us for Module 1 and 2, or if you were not able to join us, that you at least got to watch the recording. So we're so excited to be on Module 3, and we are so appreciative of Lanny Simpson for all the work she's done to put this together for us and to guide us through these modules. So Lanny, I am going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ivana. I'm Lanny Simpson, and I'm the English Learner Director in Burke County Public Schools. And as Ivana shared, we are on to our third module, and I ask you for pre-work to do the WIDA ELD Standards, a Collaborative Approach Canvas course, module number 3. And so basically our time together today is to reflect on what we've learned in that module with a specific focus on key language uses. All right, come on, not paging. There we go. Ivana, anything you need to explain on the WebEx details?
Okay, I just heard somebody else talking about, oh, I use Zoom, oh, I use this. So there's so many different platforms. So we just want to make sure that you're familiar with the layout on WebEx. So if you look at the example here up in the right corner, you have the opportunity to change your layout, how you look at it, whether you want to control it so that you've got the pictures as well as the speaker view, or if you want to change it up, that is where you've toggled. We also want to make sure you know where your meeting controls are. Sometimes we'll say raise your hand. The meeting controls are along the bottom of your screen. When you move away, they'll disappear. If you put your mouse back over it, they should come back up. So we are looking forward to lots of participation today. As you're coming in, I've been moving you over to the panelist position. That gives you the opportunity to mute and unmute yourself, also to turn on your camera if you want. Unfortunately for our call-in users, I'm not able to move you over, but I am able to unmute you if you put in the chat box that you want to be unmuted. I've got lots of new people coming in, and I've got to find my chat box so I can help watch that as well. Thank you guys so much.
Okay, so in order to recap the 4 key language uses, I want us to take a look at the graphic on the screen, and let's think about narrate for a minute. I've given you some examples of where you would find the key language function of narrate. And so you would find these in the various genres that you see in the thought bubble. Okay, let's think about inform next. With inform, we want to consider academic genres such as classify reports, compare contrast reports, problem solution reports. All of those types of genres would use the key language use of inform. So how about explain? So if you'll take a look at these genre families, and what I'd like for you to do is, if you can think of another genre family or even an activity where you would use the key language use of explain, if you'll type that into the chat box. Process writing, okay. The butterfly life cycle, science experiments, how or why phenomena occur, absolutely. Think about explaining the water cycle and why it occurs. Perhaps you might talk about the food chain, and if you remove an element from the food chain, how might that affect the consumers that are subsequent in the food chain. Describe landforms. That's a great inform. How viruses mutate. Whenever you proceed by the word how, you know you are explaining. Absolutely. The water cycle, yes, Isabella, you can explain how the water cycle works. There's lots of academic genres. Sequence of events might be couched in the key language use of inform. So a lot of it, you just have to consider, what are your purposes for your students' learning? Let's take a look at the key language use of argue. And if you'll notice, there are many elements and academic genres with the key language use of argue. It really originates in the early grades in the form of opinions and giving reasons why you like or you don't like something, all the way through high school, where you are creating an argument, defending it with textual evidence, producing counterclaims. And so we see the key use of argue as probably the biggie key language use in the language of schooling. Debate, ELA, argue, ELA, interview, argue, absolutely. So lots of examples of academic genres associated with key language uses. So very nice. And what I want us to do is to look at what WIDA terms the most prominent key uses. And they've developed these matrices, if you will, for each grade band. And it has the 4 key language uses across the top. And on the leftmost column, you have the 5 standards. And they have actually gone through oodles and oodles of grade appropriate kindergarten text and teased out the academic genres and which ones are more prevalent in the grade band of kindergarten. And so what I want you to notice is, if you look at social and instructional language, what do you see? How does it relate to key language uses in kindergarten? Absolutely. It relates to all 4. Absolutely. All 4 are present. Okay. Very good. Nice. And so when you look at key language uses, which one is most prevalent across all of the 5 standards? So if you're looking vertically down the matrix, which key language use is most prevalent across all of the 5 standards? Absolutely, Brittany. Inform, Susan, yes, inform. And so when you think about what kindergarten instruction looks like, these students are just beginning to learn the world as it relates to school and to learn concepts and phenomena. And so it makes sense that the key language use of inform is most prominent across all content areas. And what I'd like for us to do next is, Ivana, I'd like for you to drop the link in the chat box, and I'm going to go there now. And so WIDA has developed what they call snapshots of key language uses in kindergarten across the 4 different key uses. So I want you to take about 30 seconds to a minute and peruse this document of how key language uses flesh out in kindergarten. Okay, so once you've had a moment to peruse the snapshot, if you would enter in the chat box an example of a key language use in kindergarten, how you would see it fleshed out in kindergarten teaching and learning. And you can select one of these that are on the snapshot document, or you can simply use your background knowledge of kindergarten teaching and learning and key language uses and type one in that you have thought about. Express likes and dislikes about food, absolutely. Kindergarten uses the key language of inform to categorize objects by shapes, sizes, very nice. Share opinions about issues from their own lives, absolutely. Key language is based on experience. I like that. For those of us who've taught ESL for a long time, the language experience approach is ideal for kindergarten all the way up to high school. Retelling personal experiences, exactly. Retelling is so important. Describing story events, love it. Putting together graphic organizers showing life cycles, nice. Retell a familiar story, absolutely. Okay, I think we've got the idea down about key uses in kindergarten. And so what we're going to do is go back to our presentation and we are going to take a look at the most prominent key uses in first grade. So if you'll notice here, I have a horizontal box that I can drag and drop, and I want you to type in the chat box and tell me which of the 5 WIDA ELD standards has all 4 key uses. Where should I drop this box? Standard 1. Oops. Oops. Let's drag and drop. It's not wanting to drag and drop. Woo! Gotta get out of presentation mode. Okay. Okay. There we go. Now, tell me where the vertical box should go. Which of the 4 key uses crosses all of the 5 standards in first grade? Tell me where to drop the vertical box. Exactly. So the key language use of inform, I'm going to go back to present mode. There we go. So how does this compare to kindergarten? Can you type that in the chat box for me? How do the key uses in first grade, the most prominent ones, compare to kindergarten? Yeah, exactly. They're the same for both. So very nice. Okay. And then let's take a look at the snapshot document. Ivana, if you'll put the link in the chat box for first grade, and let's take a look at how key language uses flesh out across first grade. And if you'll take about 30 seconds to a minute to preview the document. And then I'd like for you to type in the chat box an example of a activity or instruction that involves first grade key language uses, or one that comes off out of your head with your background experience in first grade and key language uses. Tell me how narrate or inform, explain, or argue would flash out in a first grade activity or learning experience. Can be one of these in the snapshot document or one out of your own head. Venn diagrams, compare and contrast, narrate, creating new stories, give reasons for opinions, absolutely. Inform, name 3 facts about the topic. Very good, very specific. I like that. Nice. And as you can see, describe your last meal. that may have a double meaning there. I love that. Develop story events. Very good. Absolutely. Okay. I think that with first grade and kindergarten, it is natural to understand why inform would be the most prominent key use, and then social and instructional language we see is very important across all of the 4 key language uses, as it couches the language of content or nests the language of content. So very nice. Let's take a look at our next grade band with our most prominent key language uses. Grades 2 through 3. If you'll take a moment and look at the matrix that organizes the 4 key language uses against the 5 standards, and tell me where I should drag and drop my horizontal box. Which of the 5 standards has the most prominent key language uses? Standard 1, exactly. And I'm going to come out of present mode to do that. Let's try to escape. Let's go back here. And I'm going to drag and drop my horizontal box and tell me, where should my vertical box go? Where do you see the most prominent key language use across many of the 5 standards? Where do you see that? And if you'll type it in the chat box, absolutely. Argue. So, what can you conclude about grades 2, 3 versus kindergarten and first grade? What is our differential here? Oops. Argue. This format reminds me of Consumer Reports ratings. I love it. Yes, absolutely. And argue, Martha says, and also explain to just a tiny lesser extent. Very good. Explain and argue. Right. Nice. Argue. Explain and argue. Very good. And so let's take a look at that snapshot document. And these are also found in the new WIDA resource guide with regard to the new standards. And I felt like this was a really handy document that helps us to understand how key uses play out in learning experiences within the grade band. So if you'll take about 30 seconds and peruse the learning activities and experiences for grades 2 through 3 for the key language uses. And if you'll type an example into the chat box of a learning experience and the key language use that is conveyed. The link is not allowing it to be a link for 2, 3. Can you see my screen? You should be able to read it off my screen. And we'll try that link again. Did it work for you? Okay. Okay.
It is working for me. I put it in the chat again without the header. Sometimes it takes a few seconds for the system to give you the warning that you're going to an external site. So it may be the speed of your computer. Glad some people are getting in. Thanks.
State opinions. Very good. And what key language use would that be? Argue. Ask questions about others' opinions. Argue pros and cons to an issue involving research. Yeah, absolutely. Argue, giving supporting details to go along with your opinion. Very nice. Okay. So let's take a look at grade band 4 through 5. And if you'll tell me, where should I drop my horizontal box? And I'll come out of present mode. Standard 1. We're beginning to sound like a broken record, aren't we? And how about vertically? Select a key language use that covers the most standards, that is the most prominent. Absolutely. Again, it is argue, and a secondary key language use, absolutely, Susan, would be explain. Yep, Mike, argue and explain. You got it. Absolutely. Okay. So if we take a look at our snapshot document for grades 4 through 5, and Ivana, if you'll put the link in the chat box, and I want you to take about 30 seconds to peruse this document and type in the chat box an example learning experience or activity that supports one of the 4 key language uses in grades 4 through 5, or you can come up with one out of your own head and experience and knowledge of key language uses. Identify events. Explain the events. Debate about the most dangerous weather. Oh, that's an interesting idea. Generate questions about different perspectives, including elements of a myth. Nice, Susan. Narrate. Write an original myth. I like that, okay? Science. Explain consequences of climate change and severe weather. Absolutely. Very nice. Okay. So we know how do grades 4 through 5 compare to grades 2 through 3? I can go back to 2, 3. Here we see 2, 3. And now let's look at 4, 5. Taking the language experience and expectations to another level. Standard 1 and argue are the most prominent. Absolutely. Requires more reasoning from ELDs. Absolutely. You'll see that extended discourse as you move through the grades. Okay. And then grades 6 through 8. Tell me where to drag and drop the boxes. And I'm going to escape presenter mode so I can drag and drop. Where do I want to put my horizontal box? Which of the 5 standards? Yes, standard 1. And then my most prominent key language use that covers all of the content areas. Where do I want to move my darker box? To argue as well. And then my secondary vertical box, which key language use? Absolutely, explain. So what can you conclude about grades 6 through 8 versus grades 4 through 5? How does this matrix compare to this matrix? What do you see about the key language uses as they play out across the 5 standards in grades 4 through 5 versus grades 6 through 8? Similar, absolutely. They're actually exactly the same. Absolutely. Very nice. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and move to grades 9 through 12. You can peruse the 6 through 8 snapshot document at your own leisure. There we go. And so in grades 9 through 12, I want you to tell me where to move my boxes. And my horizontal box, standard 1. And how about my most bold vertical box? Which key language use crosses the most content areas? Argue, exactly. And my secondary? Explain, right. And so how does 9-12 compare to 6-8 and 4-5? Absolutely. They are all the same. And let's take a look at the snapshot of key language uses in grades 9 through 12. Ivana, if you'll put that link in the chat box as well, or you can simply look at my screen. We can just about get everything on the screen there. And if you will type in the chat box an example learning activity that utilizes a key language use for grades 9 through 12, if you can pop that in the chat box and write the accompanying key language use that goes with it. For grades 9 through 12. High school people, we need you to come in and be the heavy hitters here. Analyze and evaluate data. Key language use of explain. Absolutely. Argue, adjust arguments based on new data from experience. Experiments, perfect. Biology class, chemistry class, persuade, argue, and a literary analysis. Very nice, Tamara. Absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to head back to our presentation and get back here. Okay. And so what I'd like for us to do is apply our learning today. And what I have for you is a choice board. And so on the left-hand side, let's take a look at the purple box. And so reflect on a unit that you have done with your students. What's the topic? Reflect on a learning activity embedded in that unit. What is it? What key language use will your students practice? So in other words, I just want us to reflect on a previous lesson we've taught and how it would match to a key language use and what is the learning activity that you're thinking of that is embedded in that unit. Or what I'd like for you to do is create a Google drawing that reflects one of the 4 key language uses. And this is for our very artsy, creative people. And you can show how it's developed in a grade level activity, in a lesson you've taught. Either one is fine. So keeping those 2 choices in your mind, let me provide you with a little more information, and you be thinking about which one you would like to do. And these are on your own activities, okay? So if you were to select that you wanted to do a Google drawing, Google drawings are really simple by simply using the insert function. You can insert images, you can insert a text box and type some information. You can insert shapes, tables, you can insert a line and including squiggly lines and draw. Okay, so keeping that in mind, depending on which one you choose, if you decide that you want to share about a unit that you've taught and the learning activity within the unit and what is the key language use and how your students would practice that, that is what you must do or be prepared to share. And if you want to make your work amazing, you could add in a language objective to the key language use. Or if you want to do a Google drawing that simply reflects one of the 4 key language uses of narrate, explain, inform, or argue, you can add images to your Google drawing reflecting the key language use. So for example, if I selected narrate, I might include a photograph of someone reading a story. Include that grade level activity. You might add in your Bitmoji to make it amazing. Okay, keeping those 2 choices in mind, once you decide which one you're going to do, you would post it to our Padlet. So for example, I'm going to go to the Padlet. Okay, so I have divided our Padlet into posting columns for either if you're an elementary teacher and you want to share about your lesson plan or your unit and how you think a key language use would connect to that, and how students would practice the key language use, you would click on the plus sign in this column. If you're a middle school teacher, the plus sign in this column. If you're a high school teacher, click on the plus sign in this column. If you want to do a Google drawing to illustrate a key language use, elementary teachers would post here. Middle school teachers would post in this column, and high school teachers would post in this column. So I've done some models so you could see what I'm thinking about in terms of your posting. And I'll show you in just a moment how to do an audio recording within the Padlet. The topic of my unit is Romeo and Juliet. And we're studying this in High School English 1. And in my learning activity within the unit, I'm having students partner together and they will select a theme that they want to find evidence within the text selection that we just read of how this text supports the development of the theme, and they'll have to provide their reasoning as to why it does it. And so, for example, I might select the theme of bad fate or star-crossed lovers and provide 2 examples of evidence from the text and argue to my partner why I think that this text selection supports the theme or develops the theme of bad fate. So my key language use is argue. Okay. And so I wrote my language objective underneath because I realized I did not record my key language use, but in the comment I put language objective could be construct an oral argument with textual evidence to support theme development. If you choose to do a Google drawing that describes a key language use, this was very simple. It didn't take me long at all to insert a slide from a lesson that my lead teacher taught on Spain exploring the Americas. And my key language use was narrate. And these are the key words that let me know that my overarching key language use would be narrate. It's a historical account. I need you to use sequential language to write the summary about the chapter, and I need descriptive language. So that is my Google drawing.
And you've got some eager beavers, Lanny, wanting to know where the link is, and we haven't given it to you yet.
No, we haven't, because there was
with our students, we want you to listen.
Yeah, there was so much to explain. So if you do an audio recording, when you click on the plus button on the Padlet, it's going to give you these choices. You would click on the hexagon with the 3 dots, and then it will take you to this pop-up screen, and you'll click on audio recorder. And it's just really simple, and it will record the audio and post it. So it's easy peasy. With the Google drawing, I simply copied the address in the address bar of my Google drawing and popped it in as a link. So, but you can do other things. This drawing is freehand drawing, which you can do on a Padlet. So, any of these options are certainly acceptable. So those are our directions. And Ivana, if you are ready to post the link in the Padlet, there we go. And what I'd like for you to remember is if you're going to do an audio recording, you need to be muted. So Ivana, it may just be, if you can mute everyone. If you have any questions, you can type in the chat box while we're doing the activity. But I think in order to avoid picking up audio from you doing your recording, it would just be best if Ivana mutes us.
So everybody is muted at the moment.
Okay. So you are ready, Freddie, and we will take. I will check in with you in 5 minutes. On the road because Fred Vanessa basically
reporting live in Charlotte. Ashley Daly.
Five, seeing that third day off. Recommending cancel classes on Monday, November 1st. Teacher workday is already scheduled. Taxpayer money. Tomorrow, council finances.
Still to come, lawmakers working to strike a deal.
Whether this is constitutional. Time for designed to keep up. It's time for giving you $1,800. Introducing cross between a
Tonight at 11 on WC. Take it out. Possibility.
For congressional strike a deal on multi-trillion. Final agreement social safety net, climate change. One $3.5 trillion. Final likely to come in around $2 trillion.
It is less than we had was projected to begin with, but it's still bigger than anything in terms of addressing the needs of America's working families.
Biden leaves for key summit meetings in Europe on Thursday. Democrats hope to have this all wrapped up by then.
Every year, drivers have to renew their car registrations. Many people in North Carolina teach on this pool.
Can you type it in the chat box if you need more time? I'm assuming most folks do when I look at well, if you, and let me tell you this, if you are a fast finisher, you can add a comment. I would like for you to add a comment to at least one other person's post and add some likes, please. So be sure and peruse other posts and add a comment. And some likes. So at least one comment, please. More are appreciated. Okay. Does anyone else need more time? I would love for us to listen to this first grade science example. The nocturnal animal unit, students will be able to compare and contrast owls and bats on a Venn diagram. Key language uses are inform and explain. Let's see if we can listen.
First grade nocturnal animal unit, students will be able to compare and contrast owls and bats on a Venn diagram. This is a speaking and writing activity. Key language uses, inform and explain.
Nice. Is there anyone who would like to unmute and share an example that resonated with them? Let's see. Your hand raised.
Don't be shy, you guys. We really want to hear your voices.
I love this narrate with the sequence of events graphic organizer. First grade students will retell a Native American legend with the help of a graphic organizer completed beforehand. They will use sequencing language, first, next, then, and finally. Yep. Key language use of narrate. Very nice.
Should I call on a few people?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Miss.
Right. Let's see. Let's see. And you can always tell me no or phone a friend. But I see Lisa Sabaha is on. Lisa, would you be willing to share? You should be able to unmute yourself. And again, no is always an option.
Hi, I'm actually still working on mine. I have not posted it yet, but I can explain to you what I'm doing.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I'm working on first grade with Narrate, and I've created a Google drawing that has imagine and create new stories. And their job is to write a story about yourself as a superhero, include a setting, character, problem, and solution. And then I'm also including some sentence frames that could be used with a first grade level student to make that a little bit more manageable. So I should have that ready to post in just a minute or two.
Nice. Thank you.
Lisa, do you see any names you recognize? Would you like to call on someone and see if they're willing to share?
Let me see. I see there's another Lisa Dale.
Lisa Dale, are you willing to share? You can unmute. I hope you can unmute. I muted her at one point, so. All right, pick another one.
She may be on a phone.
Yeah.
Who did the second grade communities? It's just beautiful. Are you willing to share?
Second grade communities. Somebody take claim for it. It's gorgeous.
It is. After introducing key ideas and vocabulary of rural and urban within communities unit, students will brainstorm and illustrate places within our community. Students will collaborate to create a map of our community. They will explain how the map should be arranged based on studied concepts, vocabulary of rural and urban. Students will argue to support their ideas of map construction based on their knowledge of rural versus urban. Students may then use the map in sentence frames to help give information about their own community.
Hey, Lynn, that's me. It's Deidrea.
Oh, hey, Deidrea.
I just couldn't get unmuted quickly enough.
Okay.
I've done that unit with some of my newer comer students and was really surprised with how they would argue their viewpoint with one another about how large the roads should be on their maps, what kinds of stop signs or stop lights, or how close together the buildings should be. Because they would say that's rural. No, it should be further apart. That's urban. It's you know, it's going to be closer together, and they would reference places in our community. So I felt like it was a good real world application of that, and they were able to use that vocabulary correctly and really get a grasp of that concept.
Very nice. And I love how you have nested the different key language uses that come into play in your what's in your community unit. Very nice.
Thanks.
Can I have a volunteer for a Google drawing?
Use yours. I did mine on the animal food chain, which is present in 5th grade, and I chose the key language use of argue, where students will support claims with evidence and reasoning. So once they choose, they'll have to answer what would happen next and provide evidence to support their answer. And so argue would probably be the best choice here, because they have to use evidence and explain why the food chain would change.
Thank you, Sandy. Do we have any other brave souls? Oh, I love this. Somebody. Oh. Explain the 5 senses. Cute. Very nice. Okay. Oh, here's a beautiful one. Let's go green. Would the owner like to volunteer and share? Oh, that's nice. I think we have some shy folks tonight, or maybe just unable to unmute.
My guess is, even though it's Monday, we got some tired people out there too.
Well, we have some lovely examples.
Wonderful.
I hope this activity has given you the opportunity to dip your toes into key language uses and to reflect on a unit that you already taught and how you can incorporate the key language uses. And I think everybody's done a really good job of this. And when you consider your scaffolds, I would suggest that you think about how to support the development of the key language use that is most prominent in your unit. So focus on that social and instructional language that entails arguments, and consider having word banks with that type of language that crosses all content areas, and in addition to your content vocabulary. So beautiful. I love the poetry one here. Nice. Would whoever just posted the 4th grade ELA poetry unit like to share out?
Hi, I just did the unit with my 4th grade students. And in the beginning of the unit, we were looking into the characteristics of 2 genres, poetry and prose. So they used word banks, and they used also comparison charts with words for both of the genres. to compare and contrast poetry and prose. And later on, they use those charts, word banks, and also sentence frames in their speaking activities to explain the differences between the two genres. And I also had the students write 2 paragraphs to compare and contrast the genres in the end of this small unit.
Nice. Thank you so much. Everybody has just done such a lovely job of these posts, and I appreciate those of you who ventured out to do audio recordings and Google Drawings, and those who added beautiful photographs and drawings to their post. Absolutely lovely. And so let me go back to
Lanny, how long will we have access to this?
to the Padlet.
Yes.
It as long, I mean, as long as I have it in my library, it will be there.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
So those that are watching the replay will be able to access the links.
Yeah.
We need to get those links and make sure they can get to them so that they can add to it.
Absolutely. And you've got the list of links.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
yep, there you go. And I thank you for responding to other people's posts with a comment or a like. And so that is the end of our session today. We're just a couple minutes over. I want to remind you to watch Module 4, and we will continue to dig in deeper and deeper into the ELD WIDA standards framework. And I look forward to seeing you next time in 2 weeks.
Wonderful. We thank you guys all for being here on a Monday afternoon. And Lanny, once again, thank you so much for the work you've done to put this together. We really hope you guys are able to take the time to watch the WIDA modules before you come. I mean, you're going to learn a lot just by coming and watching what we're doing here. But the modules just really make it very applicable as well, and gives you a little bit more opportunity to kind of marinate in the material and then come and then add even more here. So we encourage you to watch Module 4 before the next time. And thank you all again. Have a great night.
Thank you, everybody.
So